tell me what you're. Perfect. Sure, if you want to. Oh, yep.
All right, well, welcome everyone to Dragon Tail Books. I'm Ann Vogel. People might trickle in a little
totally
bit.
Fine.
We have Locust Night Out. This is our final environmental series presentation, and Earth Day is Monday, so this is a good one to end on. And so we have Megen Hines from the city of Menomonie, and she's going to talk about recycling.
Yes.
And I brought lots of things I have questions about, so I hope you're willing to answer questions.
Absolutely, I am very willing to answer questions.
In the middle, or should everyone wait?
In the middle is fine too. I'm pretty easygoing on that.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited.
Yes, as Ann said, I'm Megen Hines. I'm the Environmental Program Coordinator for the City of Menomonie. So my position, I manage the city's solid waste and recycling program, stormwater program, forestry, hazardous waste, energy, sustainability kind of stuff. So anything under that umbrella is typically going to be me that you'll be working with if you have questions. So kind of the basics, why do we recycle? Obviously we want to promote recycling has valuable materials and making new things. We don't want to throw things in the landfill when there's still a reuse for them and a repurposing available. Reduces the need to mine or dig from the earth. That's a thing that wars are fought over. So having that material stream is important to us. Obviously reduces the amount of waste sent to a landfill, reduces the need to build more landfills or expand the landfills we currently have. No one really particularly cares to have a landfill in their backyard. And yet at this point, it's still a very real necessity for our society to have landfill. Without a huge cultural change, we will still have landfills for the foreseeable future. Saves energy, water, greenhouse gas emissions, money. It's a huge job creator, especially compared to trash collection. So recycling typically provides 6 times more jobs than trash collection. When you think about all of the uses for the materials and trucking and manufacturing that happens in the reuse part of recycling. And also it protects our water resources and keeps our communities clean. So it's a little bit of a nexus there. It's not something people think about a ton, but mostly on the littering part of things. So things, when litter is in the storm drains, you can see, here's a storm drain. At the end, it goes out to most of the water bodies in Menomonie, with the exception of a few regional stormwater ponds, but for the most part, it goes down to the lake, it goes down to Gilbert Creek, Galloway Creek, etc. So stuff that goes into those drains will end up in our waterways, which is what we don't want to happen. So the City of Menomonie Recycling Program, we have both a drop-off site that residents can use, and you can also have your waste and recycling picked up curbside. So we have a drop-off site off of Gilbert Creek Road, which is kind of down by Lucette Brewery. And it's open on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturday mornings from 7 a.m. to noon. It is for city residents only, and there is a permit required. You can either request it online or go right down to the drop-off site and talk to one of the gentlemen that lives down there and they'll get you a form. With curbside haulers, there are 2 currently that work in the city. Waste Management and GFL. We are certainly open to more. These are just the ones that are willing to come to our community geographically. If you're looking for a really great business idea for a local thing, start up a garbage and recycling company in this area. There's a huge need for more local haulers in this area. These are both multinational corporate structure hauling companies. And so the crux of what can we recycle? So recycling is kind of a localized thing as far as what we can recycle. Kind of like a watershed, like most people think of a watershed, know that all the water that goes to one point. We also have what's called a MRF shed. So MRFs are recycling centers. So MRF is Material Recovery Facility, which is just a fancy name for the recycling facility. They also have a watershed of the materials that they accept. So the geographic area that they accept materials from, the MRF decides what gets recycled. Because what they have the capability, whether that's through people, whether that's through the machinery that they have, and also the markets that they have available to them to sell the materials, that determines what is actually recyclable. In the state of Wisconsin, there is also a recycling law. So many recyclables, what we would consider our regular recyclables, paper, cardboard, plastics, steel cans, aluminum cans, glass, et cetera, are required by law to recycle. That is not the case all across the country. There are many states that do have laws of some form, but there are also many states that have really no laws that require recycling. So the things we want to recycle in our curbside bins or in our drop-off sites are aluminum and steel cans. So your pop, sparkling water, beer cans. Steel cans are, vegetables, soup, that kind of stuff. You don't have to remove any of the labels, but you do want to give them a quick rinse. They don't have to be so clean that you would eat out of them again. Like, please don't put them through your dishwasher. That is something people have asked me before. Unless you're going to use them for a reuse or something, but they just have to be clean enough that you wouldn't, or that you would be okay, like, having to handle them again, because somebody probably will have to touch them again. So if it's too gross that you don't want to touch it, neither do the people at the recycling center. So that's kind of the level of clean that we want to get to. Glass bottles and jars. So these are your pickles, spaghetti sauce, wine bottles, beer bottles, etc. These you want to take the lids off. And the lids are actually probably going to throw in the trash. So that was
One of my questions
yes.
about lids on jars.
Lids on glass jars. So when there's two different types of materials, if you think of a plastic bottle, they have a plastic cap. That's okay. We actually encourage you to keep the caps on a plastic bottle. On a glass jar, they typically have either a plastic or a metal cap. And then we don't want those loose in a recycling center. So one of the first things that happens when recyclables are brought to a recycling center, they go through a screen, and the screen is about 3 inches wide by 3 inches square. So it's about the size of your fist. So anything smaller than your fist is going to fall out. The purpose of that is to get as much of the glass out of this stream as possible at the very beginning, because glass is really, really tough on machinery, and it's super heavy and all that, so they want to get that down. Well, what happens is anything else that's small, say a beer bottle cap or a jar, is going to fall right through with it into the glass, and then it'll be a contaminant and end up getting thrown away. So instead of having to take the scenic trip to the landfill, you can throw it in the landfill at your house, your regular trash. Yes.
So the metal caps that are on spaghetti jars, those are not recycled?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're kidding. It's steel.
You can, if you're a really pro super recycler. I keep a clean steel can, and I put my twist off lids inside of that and then squeeze it and then throw it in the recycling. So that's an extra pro tip, not everyone, not required, but if you're really looking to get them recycled, that is a way to get them recycled. So.
Why is that in the literature being asked? Because that's a lot of steel going away.
Yeah, so trying to keep things as, when we give material out to the public, as far as especially on social media or websites, trying to keep it as succinct as possible. And when I give presentations and that kind of stuff, I try to include that information, but having sometimes too much information deters people to say well, if there's me that many rules, I'm just not going to recycle. So that's kind of trying to get the majority of people to recycle the majority of items. And then, there's kind of that extra tier of, if you want to be a super recycler, here's some pro tips for that. Martha?
So if you have a lot of beer bottle things,
Mhm.
you can't put them in with the metal bins that are at the end of the dumpster.
You could. They're not going to, that's a pretty low reuse for them, and they have a hard time in their system as well because they are so small.
Okay,
And
so we should just put them in the garbage.
in the garbage, or if you, like I said, if you want, I keep a tin can and throw them in and then squeeze the top shut so it can't fall out, and it gets into the tin with or the steel. I guess it's not tin anymore. It gets in with the steel cans at the recycling center.
When do we start mining landfills?
That's I'm assuming at some point, probably in my generation, and I would guess that we'd eventually potentially get there.
Thank you.
I'm just curious, because you mentioned if you have one of these lids in and it falls in with the glass and then it's contaminant, does that mean all the glass and everything gets thrown into the landfill, or are they just, someone has to go?
No. So they will send it off to a glass processor. So once it goes to the recycling facility, they'll have this bunker full of broken glass, and they will send it off to gets a secondary processing, and there's one in the cities that then sorts it between like the different colors. So we used to have to separate like blue glass from amber glass from clear glass. We no longer have to do that because of the optical sorters that are there now. So it goes to a glass processing facility. They screen it again, trying to get those contaminants out. And then it goes through optical sorters, and eventually there's some heat applied. So any of the like labels or things that are combustible basically melt off of them. And then ends up in bunkers of the different colors. So I was able to tour a glass facility in the Twin Cities probably 5 or 6 years ago. The pile of glass that was sitting there, if I wasn't told it was glass and you looked at it, you would not know it was glass. You actually had to train your eyes to find the glass. There was that much shredded paper, bottle caps, plastic bottles, all sorts of things in there. Like you actually had to look for the glass first. You couldn't identify it. So that's a big issue, and the glass processing facilities have a lot of cleanup to do because they are that first screen through the recycling center. So plastic is the next one. This is probably the most confusing part of recycling is plastics. It's also a real low value recyclable, so that's a hard one as well. So in Menomonie here, we take number 1s, number 2s, and number 5s. I don't really like using the numbers for recycling. I prefer to say like any plastic kitchen, laundry, and bath containers, jugs, and bottles would be I'd rather go by shape. The numbers on the bottom of plastics, just because there's a number there does not mean it's recyclable. Those numbers were never meant to indicate recyclability. They started in the 70s from plastics manufacturers that were looking to identify the resin type. So they put these numbers on them. And as recycling was growing in popularity, our industry was like, hey, look, there's these cool numbers. Let's like throw a symbol around them and say that they're recyclable. So here, number 1s, number 2s, number 5s, with a few exceptions on number 1s being the like deli takeout containers are not recyclable, berry containers are not recyclable, any of the like lettuce, if you get lettuce in a plastic jug or like a plastic container like this, are not recyclable. They will probably have a number 1 on the bottom, and they're still not recyclable. And these we want caps on for plastic bottles. Question. So while they're the same plastic resin type as like a soda bottle or a water bottle, they're manufactured in a slightly different way. So one is called injection molding and one is like blow molding. So because of the slight differences in how it's manufactured, it melts at a slightly different temperature. So when they're all thrown together, once the plastic goes to the recycling center, goes to a plastics facility where then it's melted, it's typically chipped and then melted. That, when it doesn't melt all at the same temperature, then there's some that are still kind of chunky and not fully melted, and then that creates bubbles and flecks in the new items they're trying to make. So that's why they're not recyclable. Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a local thing though, that varies by place? Something like Madison, they do the clam shells?
It can, but it's really market driven, and there's not really a ton of markets for that material because you'd have to collect semi-loads of baled clamshells, and there's just not the demand for it. Certainly, a lot of things are, in theory, scientifically possible to be recycled. You just have to collect them all. And really, we have the infrastructure and the understanding of how to collect recyclables. You'd have to bale them, get into the recycling facility, bale them, but then you have to have someone who wants to buy them and buy them for enough money that makes sense to pay for all the collection that we do. So that's unfortunately where the clamshells kind of fall, because there's just not the economic market for it right now.
Is it bad if you're not sure to throw it in the recyclable and you get escaped out in the process versus?
So I always say, when in doubt, throw it out, or when in doubt, give me a shout. So those are my two. Like, if you're willing to call or email, like, I'm always happy to answer questions. But if you're really like, oh, I don't know, I would rather see you throw it away than put it into recycling. But it does less damage that way than it does going into recycling. And one of the things is, make sure you're recycling out of your laundry rooms and bathrooms. I think a lot of people are really good about recycling out of their kitchen and like the food items they use. But thinking about your laundry detergent bottles, your shampoo bottles, body wash bottles, etc. Those are all things that can be recycled as well. And same thing, make sure they're empty, a quick rinse, and then recap the bottle.
Just wondering, like, sometimes there's like mouthwash containers that have like a straw in there to like pump up the mouthwash. That's okay to just toss them as is.
Yep.
And then the cap is usually a different sort of plastic, but just put it on.
Yes.
That's what I've been doing.
Yes, that is exactly what you want to do. So what happens is, once the plastic goes to the plastic recycling facility, it's chipped up and then goes into a huge bath of water. And different plastic resins have different densities. So some sink to the bottom, some stay floating. And then after a batch, they skim off all the plastic on the top. That's one. They drain the water and take all the plastic off the bottom, and that's another resin. So that's how they get around the cap and bottle, are almost always a different plastic resin.
Sorry, one other question. When you said
Absolutely.
kitchen stuff, where the jugs, like I think it's like number 5, they're usually like yogurt containers and stuff. Those are okay.
Yep.
It's just the clamshell type.
Just the clamshells that are not okay. Yep. Paper is another one we can recycle. So this can be newspapers if you still get a daily newspaper, mixed paper, unwanted mail, even the envelopes with the windows on them, even with the credit cards inside, offers inside of them, the glossy mailers or advertisements that you get, that all can go in your recycling. You don't want like photographs. So if you get like Christmas cards and they are like the same material as a printed photograph, that is not recyclable. But if you get the Christmas cards that are like the heavier stock paper, that's recyclable as long as there's no like glitter foil. So glitter foil and a ton of glue are the things that make paper non-recyclable. You can marker it all up. You can color with crayons or pencils. That's all fine. But glitter, glue, and like foil type stuff will make it non-recyclable. And even scrap paper is fine. So as long as it's, like the size of a Post-it note or larger, you can throw it in the recycling. It doesn't have to be a full sheet or anything like that.
About the glossy stuff at the back of stamps, stuff like that. Or the tear off in the self-sealing envelope, that's like wax paper.
Yep. So that I throw away because that is one, they're usually pretty small. And anything that's kind of, remember, that fist size is going to fall through. So that's also why we don't take shredded paper in the recycling. So if you're a paper shredder, I recommend like only shredding the parts of the document that have the sensitive information on, or the information that you don't want to be shared, and then recycle the rest of the document in your regular recycling. Nope, you're fine. That's what we're here for.
So where do the shredders like Iron Mountain and stuff, where do they take it? They recycle? Or?
So paper is, they probably do a lot of reuse items in that, but the shredded paper is, one, it drops down in that first glass screen, and it gums up all the equipment. It gets stuck in the corners. You think about paper getting wet, it gets really gross. And then the paper fibers, paper is a fiber at its core. Every time it's recycled, it's cut a little shorter. And eventually, the smallest fibers are no longer recyclable. So paper can only be recycled like 5 or 6 times. So it starts out as like a sheet of paper, like nice office paper, and then slowly goes down the line of things that might be recycled next into like newspaper, or eventually would go down to like a paper plate or a paper napkin, or every use it gets downgraded one kind of level. Like, so a piece of office paper doesn't get recycled back into office paper again very often, which is why a lot of the that's one of the ones that gets reused. Now, like glass, that can be recycled over and over again without any loss of volume or quality. So that's just the earth materials, and it can just be over and over again. You don't lose any quality. Paper, you lose quality every time you recycle it. And then cardboard. So cardboard, thinking about your Amazon boxes that you get delivered to your house, any sort of packaging, but also any sort of paperboard. So that's like the boxes that noodles, crackers, cereal, that kind of stuff comes in. Just make sure you're taking out the plastic bag, liner from the cereal before you recycle. But also things like toilet paper tubes, paper towel tubes, those are all recyclable as well.
I've heard that the freezer cardboard can't be recycled, is that right?
That is not accepted in Menomonie. So freezer cardboard, or anything that goes in your fridge or your freezer that has a layer of materials in there that's called wet strength, that does exactly what you think it would. So if that would get wet, say you have like a 12-pack of sparkling water, and it's pouring rain, and you're carrying it in from your house, it gets super wet. If it was regular plain paperboard, that would get wet and it would fall apart, and you'd have cans all over. Where the items that go in the fridge or the freezer, they put this additive called wet strength in it, and that allows it to get wet and still maintain its integrity and hold on. It is possible to break down that layer, but it has to be, you have to use an additional chemical during the pulping process. So it's much more expensive, and you have to have a paper mill that even uses that chemical. And with the amount of cardboard that we have right now, and the generation of cardboard, especially with the rise of online ordering and how we are receiving our goods, paper mills just don't want it because they have plenty of access to the cardboard they need to repurpose.
We have a couple of chat questions. Yeah. One was on mixed materials, so like I have in front of me now, but the example they gave was like aluminum foil packages. They come in the box, but then they've got a little metal strip so you can rip the foil. So can you put that in the cardboard? Do you have to separate the metal off?
Yeah, so I'd say for aluminum foil boxes, go ahead and throw them in the recycling. That's so negligible in the process that will wash out. Things like a Pringles can. So you have aluminum base, you have kind of a fiber tube and a plastic lid. Those are 3 different materials, and that's just all garbage. So that's one where mixed materials is a no, unless it's a very negligible amount, like the little metal strips and aluminum foil.
The other question is, it says GFL says it will accept plastics numbered 1 through 7. Why do they accept more than the city of Menomonie does?
So they will say they accept that. That's in state code. That is what's in the law, is that plastics 1 through 7 should be recycled, but there is at this point, perpetual waiver for numbers 3 through 7. So a fair number of communities now are recycling number 5s, but none of the MRFs that are recycling centers that we use actually accept anything besides 1, 2s, and 5s.
1, 2s, and 5s. When you say waiver, you mean?
So the state, it's a waiver so that communities are allowed in state law to actually landfill those items. Because right now, the way the state law is written, it says plastics 1 through 7 must be recycled.
Right.
But because there's not true markets for 3s, 4s, 6, and 7s, they give a perpetual waiver, a blanket waiver, so all communities can landfill that material.
So that's written into the state law. That's not a
That's not a
bureaucratic decision on this is how we'll interpret the law this time.
Yes. No, that's a waiver that they've issued because they know that those markets don't currently exist. And then how you want to put these in your bin or in your recyclables is all together. So you don't have to separate anymore. You can put them all in the same bin. I am a creature of habit and still have my paper grocery bag full of paper inside my pantry, and I bring it out to my recycling bin when it's full. But there is no need to keep that separate. That is just a weird creature of habit thing for me. And really setting up your system at home is however it works best for you. Some people, have the paper bag that they fill up, and when it's full, they bring all the recyclables out. We have a little corner of our counter that's on your way out. You grab it, and my recycling bin is right in my garage. As I come out of my door, that's where I put it. However it works best for you, it makes it easy for you, is the way you should do it. But it should be all together loose, not bagged. So no bags in your recycling.
Even the paper bags that you mentioned.
Paper bags are okay, but plastic bags are not okay. So if you have I've seen in some newer homes that have a pull-out kind of cabinet that have 2 buckets, one for trash, one for recycling. If you have a bag in there, you're certainly welcome to have a bag in that, but just don't bag it up, tie it, and then put it in your recycling. Make sure you just dump it loose into your recycling.
I'm just wondering with the paper that you mentioned, like you said, like a sticky note can work, but then also things smaller than your fist fall through. So do you think the putting them all in a paper bag helps to make sure that
Perhaps. There are some people that say, like, put your sticky notes inside of an envelope or all that. It's, if they're stuck to it, I try to at least make them stuck to a paper. And that's usually how I've gotten them. They're usually stuck to something anyways. But they usually make it through. They're just big enough. Unless they're getting ripped on something, they're making it through. That is a great question. If they are more of the paper-based ones, I would say yes, as long as they're empty, to do that. But I would say yes, you can recycle seed packets. So here are kind of some things that you should not recycle in your curbside cart. We talked about plastic bags. Those you can bring back to the grocery store, and they're made into the maintenance-free decking is the primary use for them. Scrap metal, super recyclable, but not in your curbside bin. This is stuff that ruins recycling center equipment, so they will be pulling it off if they see it, and it will not be recycled at the recycling center. If they pull it off, it's going in the landfill. They don't sort it additionally. It's just going to get pulled off. Fridge and freezer boxes we talked about. Bulky items, if you don't have a reuse for them or someone you can donate them to, they are also trash. They're capable of being recycled, but we have no facilities in this area that accept those for recycling. We talked about berry and deli takeout containers. Another big one is tanglers, which is a word our industry uses for anything that could wrap around a piece of equipment. So hoses, Christmas lights, twine, any sort of rope, any of that. One of the things that happens in a recycling facility after a couple of screens, there are some rotating discs that are on a big kind of incline, and they're rotating like this. What happens when those tanglers get in there, or plastic bags, they get stuck in there, and they actually clog it up to the point where they have to shut down the facility and do the lockout takeout process and have someone climb up there physically and cut out that material. That happens probably 8 to 12 times a day at a recycling facility because of the number of plastic bags and tanglers and things that literally make the equipment stop. So it's a super dangerous for employees. It's not their favorite thing to do to sit, and then obviously it's not good business sense to have downtime. Recycling facilities want to get that throughput to make more money. Clothing and textiles, that's a donation item. If it's not in reuse shape, I recommend using it for like cleaning rags or stuff like that until the point where you can't use it, and then it would be landfilled. And then food waste. You would think that's really obvious to not put food waste in your recycling bin, but it's not obvious for a lot of people. So food waste, recommend doing backyard composting if you have that ability or interest. Otherwise, that's just a trash item.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
On those. So plastic bags, I know there's lots of like grocery stores you can bring
Mhm.
those from the grocery store back. What about like in packaging, when you have a plastic bag that says a 4,
Mhm.
can you bring those to the
Yes.
recycling, or the places at the?
Yep, so
grocery
like the
stores?
plastic wrap around toilet paper or
Yeah.
bottled water, that kind of stuff can all, bread bags,
Right. Okay.
Ziploc bags, that kind of stuff
That's what I thought.
can all get thrown in,
Ziploc bags too.
in there as well. Same thing, really want it to be dry. That's probably the biggest key for plastic bag recycling is to have it be dry and empty of any of like the food or things that were in it. So I'm gonna have kind of a can I recycle this edition. So this is the kitchen edition. So up here we have applesauce pouches, paper towel tubes, cartons, paper towels and napkins, paper plates, and plastic utensils. So does anyone have any guesses on what's recyclable, what's trash, what's compost? Any of that? Any guesses?
Trash.
Tubes.
Yep. So the tubes are recyclable. You're correct. There are 2 things on this screen that are recyclable.
Well, if you want to mail them someplace, the cartons, some
So
of them are.
yeah, so the cartons are actually recyclable. I will give a huge star asterisk next to that. The facilities we use do accept cartons. They process them and sell them to a very specific, I think there's 1 or 2 paper mills in Wisconsin that will take them. There's not a real great market for it. I'm not 100% certain that I have not been definitively told that they make it through the recycling center correctly. So I don't promote it widely, and that's why it's not on our recycling guide, because I'm not 100% certain that it makes it through the recycling facility to the actual place. So you can throw them in there. They, in theory, are recyclable. If you follow the Carton Council, they will say that we can recycle cartons. Anyone who has GFL can recycle cartons. I'm still a little hesitant on it, but I do throw my cartons in the recycling. So that's where I land on that.
Could you define cartons, please? Because
Yeah.
this looks like a food container.
Yep, so
Mhm.
it's
Food
a,
container or milk.
yep, so a carton, so like any sort of like chicken stock or almond milk, like kind of your non-dairy milks that come in that, or regular cow's milk, if you get it in a carton. Some other like kind of soup, sometimes soups come in that kind of carton as well. So those are all considered cartons in our world. But like I said, kind of a toss up on whether it really fully makes it through. Hopefully as technology gets better and more recycling facilities upgrade their equipment, those upgrade the chances of things making it through.
You leave the plastic cap on them, or?
I take the cap off. There's a huge debate on whether cartons are a container or a fiber. So every MRF, the first thing they do after the glass screen is they separate out things that are fibers, so your paper and cardboard, and things that are containers, which are your glass, well, your glass is already out, the plastic bottles and the tin and steel and aluminum cans. So that's kind of the big debate in our recycling world, if cartons are a fiber or if they're a container. So it's still not solved.
So, and these are kind of like the waxy sort of
Yes.
feels? Okay.
Yep.
So that's a fridge item, that's okay. But
Yes.
Then like on the
I know,
other
it's so
picture,
confusing.
You had the pop
Pop,
can
yeah.
boxes, which are not necessarily sold in the fridge section of the grocery store, but
Right.
those are not recyclable.
Correct.
Okay.
Or like fish sticks, like your freezer kind of
Or, yeah, anything in the
appetizer
freezer.
kind of things. So applesauce pouches or any food that comes in a pouch, while super convenient and very handy to have and use, they are not recyclable. And many foods are starting to come in these kind of pouch things. Same kind of goes for like a trail mix pouch. Any kind of pouch is not recyclable. Paper towels and napkins, you can compost them if you have a backyard compost bin, but otherwise those are trash. The tube itself can get recycled when you're done with your paper towels. Paper plates also are a trash item, as are plastic utensils. So now we'll move to the bathroom. So, any thoughts on what might be recyclable on this slide?
Shampoo,
So shampoo and conditioner bottles are recyclable.
Body wash.
Yep.
toilet paper rolls.
Toilet bowl cleaner, yeah.
So the only thing that's not recyclable here is your toothpaste tubes.
It's sensitive.
It does say on there, which I take offense to. There are some programs, I think that there are some companies that have mail-in programs for recycling, for a lot of kind of pouch or like candy wrapper kind of things, that I mean, you're welcome to do, but they're not recyclable in your like traditional,
Send it back to cold.
recycling stream. The box that it comes in is recyclable. You can recycle that, but the tube itself is not recyclable.
And the co-ops, some of the co-ops in the cities are recycled toothpaste.
Okay. Yep.
Where then there's a couple of companies that are making toothpaste now, small companies that are using, going back to metal tubes. And you can split them open and send them back to them once they're clean and done.
It's a good reason to recycle in your bathroom. It's probably one of the most forgotten about spots for recycling. So now we're gonna move to the laundry room. So we have laundry baskets, dryer sheets, the dryer sheet packaging, detergent jugs, and dryer lint.
I'd say detergent jugs are in.
Yes.
And the package.
Yes. So that is correct. So the two things that are recyclable here are the detergent jugs, the dryer sheet packaging. We kind of talked about laundry baskets earlier. If you don't have a reuse, they're trash. Dryer sheets are trash. And then dryer lint, you can compost it or put in the trash, or it makes a really nice fire starter if you're into having backyard campfires. How can I recycle this in your office? So we have sticky notes, office papers, computers, laptops, kind of electronics, envelopes with windows, and file folders.
Sticky notes.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I come from far away, southern Wisconsin, and we have a thing every couple of years where you take like all your batteries and electronics. Is there anything like that here?
Yes, so we're actually next week are having a free electronics collection here in Menomonie, down at the City of Menomonie Community Services shop, which is the street department shop across from the wastewater treatment plant off of Highway 29 as you're kind of heading out of town. So that's next Thursday from 2 to 6. We're taking electronics for free. We also have a hazardous waste event that we hold annually. This year it'll be in September, on September 26th. And then there are a couple of companies in Eau Claire that take electronics year round, and like batteries and light bulbs and some of those items that we don't take at our drop off site. So all of these items are recyclable. I put a yellow recycling on the computers because they are recyclable, but not in your curbside bin. So please don't throw electronics items in your curbside bin. Those are a drop off item. And like I said, we're having an electronics collection next week. And then otherwise there's First Choice Recycling in Eau Claire is a really fantastic certified recycler that does electronics recycling. Martha?
How about CD-ROMs and CDs?
They are not recyclable. So if you don't have a reuse or donate them, they would be trash.
Oh, they can go in the trash?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
You can recycle through certain companies, Martha, if you look it up.
Oh, yeah, but it's okay. I mean, it's not gonna like be like a computer battery or something like
Nope.
that.
Nope, there's no like fire hazard or anything from those.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'm curious about like the thermal paper.
Oh, yeah, like a receipt paper? Yeah. So that is in theory recyclable. It's so negligible and so little fiber. I don't throw my receipts in the recycling. I just trash mine and try to, a lot of places now are starting to, you have an option to get a text receipt or like an email receipt. So I try to do that when I can, or just simply refuse a receipt. You know, I went to Quick Trip today and they're like, oh, do you want a receipt? No, I don't need my receipt. You know, I'll be fine. You know, I just bought bananas. You know, I don't.
Some left. That's why
Yes.
I was wondering, should I put it in recycling
So,
or not?
yes, yeah. So there's just so little fiber content in there. It's not really all that valuable. Sure.
Would keyboards be accepted in a computer, laptop?
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So any equipment that you would plug in to a computer, so like a keyboard, a mouse, external hard drives, kind of anything that's an audio or visual component, we'll take at our collection next week.
So when you said mouse, it made me think of mouse pads. Is
Yes.
there any reuse or recyclability of those?
They're not recyclable in the traditional recycling stream. Certainly, I'm sure there's some creative reuse things you could have. But yes, they're also kind of a dying breed as people do more on tablets and more portable computers for that.
Another question
Sure.
from the chat. So about the small pieces of paper.
Yep.
So you say sticky notes are good, but earlier we said that'd be the size of a fist. How small can the paper be?
I would say
To
like
go.
your regular sticky. What I think of a regular sticky note.
Sure.
Like your kind of 2 or 3 inch square sticky note. That'd be about the smallest you want. If you have the really itty bitty sticky notes, if you have super tiny writing, I would not put those in recycling unless you had them like stuffed in something.
Okay.
So that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
So can I recycle this kids edition? So we have diapers, and I'm not referring to the ones like on the screen, like used diapers. Clothes, bulky toys, formula cans, and baby food pouches.
Formula cans.
Some of them. So it depends on the can. That varies wildly. It's been a few years since I've had kids in formula. If they are all plastic, it is recyclable. If they are all metal, like a lot of the like pre-made liquid formula comes in a metal can, like a steel can, that's recyclable. The ones that are kind of like a similar kind of to a Pringles can where it's metal on the bottom and is more fiber and it has a plastic lid, those are not recyclable. So this is where it gets super confusing for people because you can't make a general statement to say like yes or no. It really depends on the material of the product.
If those, like the Pringles, if you took off the bottom, so just.
No, because the fiber can, there's some additives in that and actually some plastic and aluminum layers in there, in addition to the kind of fiber can. So oatmeal, the big ones, they are very similar in that because they have some like moisture. It's usually used for like a moisture barrier, so your oatmeal doesn't get soggy or get moisture in and get it all crumpled up. So here, diapers are trash, but believe it or not, every MRF I've ever talked to, their top 10 contaminant list, diapers are on there, which is mind-blowing to me. But literally every MRF that I've ever talked to, diapers are on their top 10 contaminant lists. I think it's an extra container for some people at home, and when you've got kids, you've got a lot of trash, and maybe, I don't know. Also, I've had experiences when I've talked to MRFs, bowling balls, dead deer, all sorts of things. They know whatever like hunting season is in season because there's turkeys or there's carcasses or deer or any of that stuff. Very mind-blowing what people will put in containers. Clothes we had kind of talked about before too, but especially baby clothes, there's a really great reuse. Though they're in them for such a short time. And there's a lot of groups. I don't know if there's one on Menomonie or not, but I know there is one in the Chippewa Valley, like Eau Claire area. They call it like buy nothing groups, where you can put it on there and say, hey, I'm not trying to sell this, but I want it to go to someone local who's not going to pay for it, and you kind of exchange things through there. My sister lives in Eau Claire and does that very frequently for small children type items. They're like, hey, I'm done with this, but I'm done with this size, but I'm looking for this size, and people kind of exchange and do that. So I think that's really fantastic. Bulky toys, same thing. If it's reusable, donate it, find a friend, etc. Otherwise, it would be trash at the end of its life. And baby food pouches are just like the applesauce pouches and things. They're not recyclable.
I was just going to mention, I'm from out of town, Madison area, and one time, like about a year ago, I went to was it a common recycle bin. And I went to throw some stuff in it. I opened up the lid, and the thing was full, and right on top was your cart gets scared the heck out of me. You jump back.
Yeah. I would like to say I'm shocked, but I'm not. Yeah, there's almost nothing that would shock me at this point after over a decade working in recycling. Thankfully, I have never found a dead body. That has been my biggest worry. When I worked more on, like, when we had the transfer facility west of town here, that we would somehow get a load that had, like, human body parts in it. That was my biggest worry. Not a fun training to attend of, like, what to do when that happens, by the way. So kind of where do your recyclables go? So we talked a lot about what is recyclable, but what happens after you put them in your cart or you put them in a dumpster at our drop-off site? So if you are have residential curbside pickup, the truck here on the left, most all of our haulers now have automatic robotic arms that they pull up, and the driver has a joystick. It kind of looks like an Atari. Those of you who played Atari, they have a little camera. They can view it. It goes out, grabs it, tips it, drops it back down. They move on. So it allows drivers. It's really great for a lot of reasons. It's super efficient, so much faster than anyone getting, stopping the truck, getting out, grabbing your 18-gallon bin, hoofing it up, and then putting it back in the curb, being back in your truck, getting seatbelted in, like all of things. So it's super efficient, super safe, so drivers are not getting out of their vehicles. The solid waste industry is like the 6th deadliest industry in the nation, right on par with firefighting and police. So a lot of injuries, not only from like the distribution system, like out on the road, car accidents, getting clipped when they're out of their vehicles, but also in the processing at the material recovery facility. And then on the right is we have a big dumpster down at the solid waste site. When that gets full, we call GFL, and a truck like the one on the right comes and loads it up and then takes it to a transfer station. So in Menomonie, we primarily, the individual garbage trucks come, they pick up from all the houses, they pick up from the solid waste site, and they go to either a transfer station in Eau Claire or Chippewa Falls. That's where all of the different garbage or recycling trucks combine their loads, and that's loaded into a semi. And that semi drives either to the Twin Cities or like the La Crosse on Alaska area, depends on the hauler, depends on the day, to a material recovery facility, which is a MRF. And then this is the tipping floor on the MRF, and it's called that because it's literally the floor they tip the recyclables on. So they back in, they empty their trucks, a loader pushes it up into a big pile, and then that's what's kind of feeds the recycling facility. So they all scoop it up, bucket by bucket with a loader to load the facility and get it started to move through their facility. So one of the first things here on the left goes through what's called a pre-sort line. There are humans involved on this line. So pretty much every MRF has a combination of humans and equipment to sort the materials. The humans are there primarily to sort out the big, bad, and ugly things that are going to be a danger to the equipment or the danger to people. Most recycling facilities now don't have people hand sorting materials. There are some that do, but not very many. On the right here is what I talked about when those disc screens that rotate around, and this is a couple of gentlemen that are harnessed in up on those screens, cutting out paper bags and tanglers from that facility. So like I said before, they split out the two lines. They have a fiber line, so the things that are paper and cardboard go there. Things that are 3D, so a lot of sorting is done by shape, so things that are 3D are gone into the container line. So that's your bottles, your jugs, your containers. Another reason why the clamshells and like deli containers are not great in a recycling facility. So even if they do get in, depending on how they're oriented and where the optics look at them, what does this look like if you just got this part of that? To a machine that doesn't have any human intelligence, it looks like a piece of paper. So they very often end up in the fiber line, which would be the wrong line for them. So that's another reason why, and they're very light, so they fly around like paper. So machines, while they are very smart, they are not humans. They're looking pretty much solely on like 2D versus 3D. So then this is on the container line on the left. This is an optical sorter. So you'll see how things are now pretty spread out. So by this time they have removed everything as much as they could have, things that were big, bad, and ugly, your bowling balls, your huge pieces of metal, your baby diapers, you know, that kind of stuff. And then it intentionally kind of meters it out and spreads it out. And it goes into this machine. That machine reads the plastic. It looks at density. It looks at a couple of different things. And it'll tell the computer, okay, in, you know, half a millisecond or whatever it is, there's a number 1 plastic coming. Give it a puff of air to send it to the number 1 bunker. Or it'll say, oh, this is number 2. Give it a different puff of air to send it over here to the number 2 bunker. So it does this. This is very, very fast. So it's faster than any of us could process that of like picking it or any of that. And that's how the majority of things are sorted, or with optical sorters now. There is a movement. Some MRFs have started investing in robotics. So, and like AI and like training robots to be more like humans, to be able to have some like ability to make better decisions, I guess, would be the best way to describe it. So that's interesting as that moves forward, how that will work. Because like any other industry right now, recycling centers are very hard up for staff to work there. So I think that will be the future, to have more robotics, to have that higher level of intelligence, being able to sort the materials. So on the right, this could be a pre-sort line, this could be a quality control line, but I like the picture because there's these bunkers. So those are, when they're picking stuff off, they're throwing that down in there, and those are a bunker, like a chute to a bunker. So they're, you know, grabbing, and each worker may have a different pick. So one worker may be going for all the trash. The other worker may be going, say if it's in a container line, all the cardboard. They're gonna pick off cardboard if it's in the container line. The other one might be going for things that are completely non-recyclable, that are, you know, all that. And they all kind of have what they call their priority pick. So if you go to a MRF, there'll be a station, they'll be, okay, this is number 1 pick is to grab trash. Number 2 pick is cardboard if you don't see any trash. And they pick, and it's amazing. It's a skill to be on the pre-sort line. I've been told by many MRFs, you either can do it or you can't. So some people, just like who get seasick on a ship, can get seasick working on a conveyor line. So you will know within a couple of hours if you're barfing or not. So that's usually the screen of whether or not you can handle working and picking on a moving thing. So most people have within a couple of hours or a day or two can realize if they're cut out for that or not. Plus the handling of garbage, and it's not the best smell always. Once all the sorting has happened, they have huge concrete bunkers that are full of, in theory, number 1s, number 2s. You have one for aluminum, you have one for steel cans. In the container line, the non-plastic items, you have a magnet to pull off your aluminum. You have a eddy current, which is, if you've ever tried to stick 2 ends of a magnet that are not the correct direction, and they kind of push each other away, that's what an eddy current does. So it actually pushes the iron or the steel away into a different bunker. So the magnet attracts and the eddy current pushes the other stuff away. So those are actually probably the easiest things to sort in a recycling facility. The next thing they do is they take all those loose materials, so all that loose cardboard or all the paper, and they bale it. Just like one would bale hay around here. It's a very large hay bale. They can weigh anywhere from 1,200 to probably 1,800 pounds per bale. And about 36 or 37 of them fit on a 53-foot semi. So that's how materials are shipped. So for the quantity that you need, like when we had the Don County Transfer Station, you know, we would have to wait until we had 37 or 38 bales of cardboard to be able to ship. So we would do that a couple of times a month. So that's another thing, is you have to have the quantity. Recycling is a quantity game. It's an economics game. certainly there are tons and tons and tons of environmental benefits, and I don't want to downplay them at all, but it is truly an economics game of what can be recycled or what will be recycled is based on economics. And trucking is a huge expense these days. But so once they get all of that, they want to have a full semi, and then it goes to a secondary processor. So so here's a picture of a loaded semi. So these are actually turned up on end. So depending on the semi and how it is, there's some different ways to stack, but this is one of the ways semis are stacked. Then they go to different facilities. So paper will go to a paper mill. Cardboard goes through like a pulping and paper mill kind of process, which in the Midwest here, we are very, and especially Wisconsin, very, very well situated on fiber. We have tons and tons of paper mills in Wisconsin that processes material. So your paper and cardboard that is you're recycling here is more than likely being processed in Wisconsin. So it's a very local one. They just built a brand new paper mill in Green Bay a couple of years ago, and I was the first paper mill that was built in Wisconsin in like 30 years. And I was able to tour it when I was there in a conference, and it's amazing. It's wild what they can do there. Plastics, majority of plastics recyclers and processors are in the southeast portion of the United States. So Georgia, Arkansas, Alabama, Mississippi, etc. Are where the primary spots that plastic gets recycled into. And then aluminum is also a very Midwestern thing, very Iowa, Illinois Midwestern thing for the aluminum and steel processing. One of the fun facts about aluminum is from the day you recycle it to the day it goes back on the shelf can be as quick as 60 days. So that's a very quick turnaround. And aluminum is about 96% recyclable. So like it is very recycled, it gets recycled often. And it's one of the more higher valued recyclables, which is why a lot of scrapyards also buy aluminum as part of their business model. We talked a little bit about the electronics collection that's next week on April 25th for residents of the city of Menomonie, town of Menomonie, and town of Red Cedar. Pre-registration is encouraged, it's not required, but you can pre-register online on our website as well. And like I said, we have the clean sweep in September coming up as well. Trying to do that annually, and there's my contact information, and happy to answer any more questions that you might have.
I've read recently, including just a few days ago, the article title is something about plastic recycling is a scam.
Mm-hmm.
You probably talk a little bit more than I am, but it was talking about basically the manufacturers are promoting it as recyclable so they can sell products, but really they don't care about the recycling part. It's just it's not going anywhere. It's not.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things to unpack there. A lot of those headlines, are trying to grab our attention and trying to do that. Like I said before, Wisconsin has laws around recycling. A lot of the country does not. And when you'll see, like I saw one a couple of years ago that was the big headline, that only 8% of your plastics get recycled. Well, they're not referring to just 8% of your milk jugs and your water bottles. They're talking of every plastic material that's made. You're talking your toys, this kind of material. So things that we don't even really have markets for. And you think about all the plastic that's generated, the plastic bags and, plastic even on chairs or stuff like that. So that's where they're getting that. They're using that bulk production number. And then they're using like the recycling rate for plastics, which is abysmally low nationwide. Some of the more recent numbers on just overall recycling nationwide are in like the 26 to 27% of all recyclables that could be recycled are getting recycled in the United States as a whole. Now regionally and like by state, that varies widely. Wisconsin is on the higher end, I think, of that number is much higher than 26%. Because of our state laws and our very robust regulations around it. Typically, higher recycling rates happen in the Midwest, for sure the coasts, so like California, Oregon, Washington, and then also like, especially the New England area is very progressive on their laws, and there's also, some of those states have what's called extended producer responsibility laws. So they are laws that saying, that, so, plastic manufacturers that are making, disposable one-use water bottles. You can make these, but you have to fund the recycling system to be able to recycle them back. So they have to put money into a pot based on a variety of things, but including the amount of items they sell in a certain geographic area, like a state. And that helps fund the recycling system that promotes, better robotics or machinery at MRFs. It promotes, recycling programs for collection to be able to subsidize some of that, especially in places and states that don't have mandatory recycling. So that helps make the economics, like we talked about earlier, better. And it skews it in favor of recycling, which then allows that to happen.
I'm from Michigan, and like the deposit.
Yep.
So when I moved, I gathered a lot of pop bottles, and I took them to the grocery store. Like, oh, where?
Yes. Yeah.
And I was surprised when I moved out of Michigan that other states don't have that.
Yes.
And I feel like in Michigan you don't see pop bottles thrown away.
Correct.
Or cans or whatever, because 10 cents is 10 cents.
Yep.
But why don't other states do it? Or some other states?
So that's a great question. And the states that do have container buyback laws like that do have very high recycling rates for those particular items. The Plastic Association and especially the Bottled Beverage Associations have very, very adamant lobbyists that are funded by a lot of companies, a lot of money to go against the buyback. Because what happens is, while you get 10 cents back, you in theory paid that 10 cents more to purchase the items, your soda or your beer bottles, etc. So, which could be a barrier for people to purchase them in the first place. They might say, hey, I'm not going to do that. And so the Bottled Beverage Association lobbyists have pushed back on that. Now in other countries, particularly European countries and even in Canada, they do these extended producer laws and pay for it and manufacture things that have to be recyclable. So it's not that they are not capable, they just don't want to, and they have the money to be able to fight it here. And the United States is allowed that kind of political lobbying to happen. So that's what it is. It's a very effective tool. I would be shocked if any state that doesn't currently have it ever gets it in place. I would be very shocked.
Back to the shredded paper, I have two questions. Please, back to the shredded paper, the pickup organizations like Iron Mountain, the records management companies. It wasn't clear from what you said what they do with the shredded paper.
That's a good question. I've never actually toured any of their facilities to know, but I know, like, if you bring shredded paper to our solid waste site, we have a couple of people who have farm animals that like to use that in their bedding mix. So we have some kind of regional, local things. People use that a lot. On a more industrial scale, they may be able to bale it and use it for a very low, they would certainly have the volume that one would need to bale it. It would be a really low value commodity though, so I'm not sure they would really do that, but I'm sure they do something with it other than paying to landfill it, because that would be a terrible business model economically. So I'm not exactly sure what like an Iron Mountain or one of those really big companies does with that.
My second question is, are you allowed to kind of describe what happened with the the transfer station out here?
The program closed. So the state recycling code, when that was enacted in 1990 or 1989, it was enacted, enforced in 1990, required, at that time, all counties became what's called a responsible unit, or RU. And then at that point, individual municipalities had the ability to opt out and be their own RU, or go with their county and be the responsible unit. So the recycling code for responsible units is I have to maintain an effective recycling program, which has a whole laundry list of things that in code that are required of me to have an effective recycling program. required me to track, to report annually. Doing education like this is one of the required things that we're supposed to do. So the Dunn County was the responsible unit for, I believe, 26-ish of the municipalities. There were a handful that were not in our RU. And the program was funded through a variety of mechanisms. One was a per capita fee for solid waste and recycling that went to the municipalities based on their populations, because we also handle trash there, not just the recycling portion. And then the other revenue source was the value of the commodities that we sold. So that is a huge roller coaster, just like the stock market. Some years are great, some years are bad. There's not a real great way to forecast that, other than you can watch the forecast for oil prices that at least tell you plastic. Plastic commodity values follow oil very similarly. And we were what's called an enterprise fund at the county, so there was no general tax levy that supported the program. So we had to be self-sufficient within those two revenue streams. And we had a grant from the state for recycling. So between those three revenue streams, I guess, we had to be solvent, kind of run as a business, which no one really likes to think of government as a business, but it really truly has to be run like a business. And there are a lot of regulations on revenues and how you can spend things and all that. Basically, our costs went up for a variety of reasons, including inflation. Our revenues had gone down at the time, the year and the year before that the Dunn County Transfer Station closed. Commodity levels were at an all-time low because of sanctions that China had induced, which I don't like to blame China, a lot of people do. We were sending them absolute garbage, and they were taking it, and it was polluting their country, it was polluting other Southeast Asian countries, and it was not good. So they had every right to have, like, hey, we're gonna send, like, what you send us needs to actually be what you're saying that you're sending us. So they didn't deny recyclables coming into their country, but what they did is they put a contamination percentage on it that was essentially impossible to attain. Now in Dunn County, we weren't sending our materials to China because, like I said, we're in a very good spot here geographically in the Midwest for processors. But everybody on the coast sent their stuff to China because China ships many, many ships over full of all the things that many people in the United States buy. And all those ships have to go back to China to get backloaded. So on a back haul, that's relatively inexpensive shipping because they're going back anyways, whether they're full or not. They would rather take your materials for that. So then the processors that the county used became inundated with other domestic materials because now everything from California, Oregon, Washington, all those states was trying to go through the domestic processing market. And now since then, there have been major investments in processing. More of our materials is staying in the United States, which I think in the long run is good. It was very painful at the time, but we lost a lot of revenue. Prices that recyclers are paying for recyclables plummeted, supply and demand. The supply went through the roof, and there was only this much processing capability. So we lost a ton of revenue, we had growing expenses. The municipalities who were part of our program were starting to question, as many good board members and stuff too, hey, this is a lot of money, this is hurting our budget, and this is gonna make our budget really difficult, what's up? So there became some discussions. After many months of discussions, there were a lot of views, a lot of rumors and stuff out there that I'm not going to dive into, but they decided that, we think we can operate this cheaper than what we're paying you to do that. And so enough municipalities decided that that was the route they wanted to take. They wanted to break off from RRU. They wanted to assume all of the responsibilities that are listed as an RU and take that on themselves. So it eventually got where it was just not financially feasible There's a number of municipalities that wanted to stay with us at the county to be able to run that facility. So we were just, it was not financially feasible, and at the time, the county leadership, they didn't have the finances to back us, to float us, and if we didn't have the support of our municipalities, it wasn't like it was just gonna be a one-time, oh, hey, our recycling revenues went really down, markets were down, here's what we're trying to do to fix it, but can you float us for a year or two while we get back on our feet? So it was more long-term than that. So that was the decision then to close the county program, which then the municipalities all became their RUs. There are several municipalities that did join together to kind of operate some of the old Dunn County sites together. City of Menomonie is our own RU. There are no other municipalities with it. And all of the townships directly touching us, except for Taint, are their own single RUs as well. That's kind of the long-winded version,
No, but
but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
makes sense.
Recycling is someone who came into recycling not learning about it in school or any of that. You think, oh, like environmental, that's my background is in environmental work, and I was like, yeah, like recycling is, save the world, but it really is an economics lesson. It's all my decisions are, between state law, and I want to do the right thing for the environment, but a lot of it is economics based. That was probably the biggest takeaway from moving into this industry is how much economics drive almost everything, which makes sense because it drives almost everything in a lot of things.
This is related to recycling, but
Yeah.
I know these things are not recyclable per se, but like I feel like I've seen different things about where exactly you're supposed to put even just regular like double and triple A batteries and then also
Yeah.
light bulbs. So,
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I like growing up, it was like you kept your batteries separate, and then my dad would bring them to the transfer station. So then
Yeah.
I was like, but then some things say you can just throw them in the trash. So
That is a great question.
I'm just
So
curious.
there are a variety of different chemistries of batteries. So your regular, like alkaline, single use, like AA, AAA, C, D, and 9 volts are okay to go in the trash. There are some places that recycle them. You usually have to pay to do it. I know at one time Batteries Plus and Bulbs in Eau Claire was doing it. I don't know if they're still doing it. I think that's going to be something we're going to see in the coming years as growing because of the materials in them. That they're going to become more valuable, and that price that they're going to pay for virgin materials is starting to creep up. So then they're going to start moving to investing in that. Totally possible to recycle them. There's just not a lot of markets for it right now, or a lot of processors in our area. Other battery chemistries, like the battery in your cell phone or your laptop, anything that can recharge, that you plug in to charge again, that has a lithium ion battery. So it's a little bit different than just a straight lithium battery, but it's a lithium ion battery. Those we really, 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 really want you to not throw in the trash or the recycling because they are a huge fire hazard. There have been a handful of facilities in Wisconsin this year that have burned to the ground, multi-million-dollar facilities because of a battery fire. There are battery fires at landfills every single day. There was a battery fire in a garbage truck in Eau Claire a couple of months ago where they pulled into a parking lot that thankfully was empty because it was super early. They dump out all their materials, but their trucks sustained major, major damage. They're able to repair it, which is actually somewhat miraculous. It is still charred on the outside. You can see where it was. But so you really want to save those for like going to Batteries Plus and Bulbs or our Clean Sweep Hazardous Waste event, and we can get those recycled properly. One of the haulers in the state down by the Madison area did a really cool video. It was a packet someone received in the mail about like a medical condition or medical like pharmacy kind of thing. And it opened up and it read to you or like talked to you, that. So they put it on the ground, they took a rock and threw the rock on it, and it was on fire, like flames in 30 seconds. So you think about what happens in a garbage truck. They're scraping, you put it on this floor, you've got a loader that's scraping against the floor. it's a environment ripe for fire. And obviously recyclables and trash has tons and tons of combustible items that burn for a very long time in MRF fires or transfer station fires burn for a very long time and they flare up. So they require enormous amounts of fire response, just in the sheer number of people and equipment. And for typically like 24 to 48 hours, having fire departments on site squelching like pop-up fires. So it's just incredibly expensive from a fire safety perspective. There are many facilities that my cohorts in other places that run these facilities that their insurance is threatening to not cover them unless they install like hundreds of thousands of dollars for fire suppression, depending on their buildings. So that's the big topic in our industry is fire suppression and cameras and all sorts of things. Thankfully, in our state so far, no one's been hurt or killed during a facility fire, but there are very real things, and that is for the people that manage those facilities, that is their biggest worry, is the fire. Yes, so if it's already in your, and that's the other thing, like, don't take your battery out of your cell phone. Like if the battery is in something and it's not like super easily removable, just don't take it out. Like keep it together and bring your cell phone to the electronics collection or your laptop. If your laptop starts to bulge, that's your battery ready to start a fire. So if you can get it into like sand, like in a bucket of sand, well, that's the main way to do it, and get it to a recycling facility as soon as you can, because that's ready to go.
That happened to me and they told me, oh, it's bulging. And so I took I took it to PC Doctor and they dealt with it. And I think WWT could probably deal with that too.
They probably have.
But yeah, they said, woo, you're gonna burn your house down.
Yes, yep.
It was really scary and I was so glad I had an issue with the computer.
Mm-hmm.
It had nothing to do with the bulging. I didn't know about the bulging.
Yeah, so anytime you see bulging, whether your cell phone or a laptop or a tablet, that's the lithium battery kind of expanding and getting ready to go as far as starting a fire.
That works with a lot of e-bikes now, especially the cheaper ones. They're having fires all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
The e-bikes, the cheap ones.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, the batteries aren't that good.
Yeah, and lithium ion batteries are they're so flammable. They're so pervasive. They're from e-bikes to your computers to vaping pens to medical, things you get in the mail from your doctor to children's toys, and they're so built into a lot of things they're not designed to be taken out. So that's been a thing with the recycling industry. You have this children's toy that you can't really get the battery out. It's no longer like a C battery or a D battery. It's a lithium battery somewhere in the guts of that's glued in. And in that instance, you'll actually do more harm trying to like pry it out because you're more likely to damage the battery or get a fire started that way.
What do you do with car batteries?
So car batteries, so in Wisconsin, there is a take back, a deposit charge on it. So it's called a core charge. So any like auto parts store, mechanic, etc., if you bring your battery back to them, there's a $10 deposit that you get back. So you pay it when you buy the battery, then when you return the battery, you get that back. Or for most of us, when my battery dies in my car, I'm buying a new battery, so it just kind of I don't have to repay that deposit. I just do that. But really, any auto mechanic, auto parts store will take car batteries.
What about hearing aid batteries? There's zillions of them, I'm sure, and they don't last long.
No, they don't.
What happens?
So those are recyclable. I would say hold on to them until you have some, a few of them to do, and you can bring them to either First Choice in Eau Claire or Batteries Plus and Bulbs, or we'll take them during our hazardous waste event. But what I recommend is taping the terminals. So any battery that you have that's not like a C or D, taping the terminals is a really good thing. So like for the hearing aid batteries, what I like to do, I used to have to sort batteries. It's part of my job. like I get a scotch tape strip and I get a long strip and then you line them all up in the strip and then take another strip and go on the top and then you line them up in a little row. Then they're taped. So then those terminals can't like rub up against each other when you throw them, like in our case, at the transfer station, we throw them in a big bucket of all the same chemistries. So they don't rub up into each other and have that ability to potentially ignite or rub on each other. So same thing for other battery chemistries, just a little scotch tape over the terminals is super helpful. Any other questions? Sure. No, you're fine. This is what I'm here for. I could do this all night.
Thinking back to what's recyclable, so there's like egg cartons.
Mhm.
The cardboardy ones are not recyclable because they're a refrigerator thing. Is that true?
Ooh, that's a good question. So that is a good question. There is an exception. So the paper,
Okay.
the more paper, cardboardy type ones,
They are recyclable.
they are recyclable. They are a pretty short fiber, so there's not much they can get recycled into, but they are recyclable. The foam kind of ones, those are like, I see them at Walmart a ton. The foam ones, those are not recyclable, those are trash. As are, I've seen clear plastic ones as well. Those are also trash. They are the same kind of molded plastic as like a berry container or a deli container. Yeah, and like we save them at the solid waste site for people who have eggs or chickens that lay eggs. Yeah. Mhm.
All right. Well, thank you all for coming and thank you,
Yes.
Megan. This was so good.
you.
I'll have you here for hours, I think.
Yes, I can talk trash all day. So I only want to put a cap on me.
Should be a basketball.
A
Yes.
little height for that.
Hopefully everyone got their questions answered.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we know we can contact
Yes.
you.
Yep, so my contact information's there. It's literally part of my job to answer people's questions. So you're not a bother. Feel free to call me or email me. I'm happy to help.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. So thank you all for coming.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for
And if
having
you're
us.
interested in local history, next Thursday, it's learning about Happy Island and Mary Bean. So,
So you're-
yeah.